There is a special kind of morning quiet in the house on a quiet street in Falls Church. I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of strong tea, flipping through the morning paper. The sun is slowly rising over the rooftops of the neighboring houses, painting the sky a soft pink. This time of day belongs to me alone. No calls, no requests, no obligations. My name is Judith Woolpool. I am 68 years old, and for the past 3 years I have lived alone in the two-story house my husband and I paid off over nearly 20 years. Edmund died of a heart attack, leaving me with this house, a small insurance policy, and memories of 42 years together. I often catch myself talking to him, especially when something goes wrong, like when the lawnmower breaks down or the kitchen faucet leaks. Edmund, I say aloud, looking at his picture on the mantelpiece. Your son rescheduled our meeting again. He says he has an important meeting. Edmund in the photograph looks at me with his gray eyes and smiles slightly. He's always been proud of Quentin, our only son. The kid will go far, he used to say when Quentin went to college to study computer science. And he was right. Quentin did indeed go far, at least financially. He is now the CIO of a large logistics company. He has a beautiful house in a prestigious neighborhood, 2 cars and a yacht moored somewhere on the coast. It's Wednesday, which means I have to pick up Ethan and Piper from school. Heather, Quentin's wife, works late on Wednesdays. She has some administrative meetings at the clinic, and their nanny is taking the night off because she has a toothache. So Grandma Judith comes to the rescue, as always. I don't mind. I enjoy spending time with my grandchildren, although our relationship with Ethan has become strained lately. Adolescence, 14 years old, is a difficult time. Piper is still hanging in there. She's only 10, and so far she's finding common ground with her old grandma. And then there's Lily, the youngest granddaughter, only 4 years old. I sit with her on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She is allergic to something at daycare, and the doctors have no way of determining what it is. Heather says she doesn't trust regular babysitters with little Lily because of her special condition. I suspect it's something else, though. Grandma doesn't charge money for babysitting. At 3:30, I'm already standing at the school gate, waiting for the bell to ring. Parents and other grandparents pull up gradually. Most of them are much younger than me. I see some of them look over at me as I approach, probably thinking, geez, am I really going to look that age at her age? The bell rings, and a crowd of noisy kids pile out of the school doors. Piper sees me right away and waves me over. Grandma! She shouts and runs to me, arms spread out for a hug. I hug her, breathing in the smell of baby shampoo and bubble gum. How was your day, sunshine? Fine, she answers, and immediately starts talking about her math test, the new girl in her class, and the fact that the music teacher gave her a solo in the school choir. Ethan walks up a few minutes later. He's tall for his age, almost as tall as me. His backpack is slung carelessly over one shoulder, and he has headphones in his ears with muffled music blaring from them. Hi, Grandma, he mumbles, without taking off his headphones or looking me in the eye. Hello, Ethan. How are things going at school? Fine, he replies, shrugging his shoulders. The standard teenager's answer to any adult question. We walk to my car, an old Honda Civic, which Edmund bought a year before he died. Quentin has suggested several times that I change my car to something newer and safer, but I refuse. I like my Honda. It's reliable and economical. Besides, it was my husband's last gift to me. On the way home, Piper chirps away, talking about school projects and friends. Ethan is silent, staring at his phone. Sometimes I catch his gaze in the rearview mirror. He stares out the window with an expression like he's being held captive. At home, I make the kids a snack. Peanut butter and jam sandwiches for Piper and turkey and cheese for Ethan. Piper sits down at the kitchen table and starts doing her homework, while Ethan disappears into the living room, where he turns on the TV. Ethan, I call out to him, homework first, then TV. He sighs as heavy as if I'd asked him to haul bags of cement. Grandma, I don't have any homework for today. You don't? I don't believe a word he says. Let's check your journal. God, Grandma, you're so annoying, he exclaims, but still pulls out a crumpled piece of paper from his backpack. Here, look. Nothing for today. I look through the sheet. Indeed, there are no assignments marked for Wednesday, but that doesn't mean there really aren't any. Okay, I say. Then you can watch TV, but no more than an hour. And don't forget you have a science test to study for. How do you know about the test? He looks at me in surprise. Your mom texted me about it, I smile. And she asked me to make sure you studied the material. Ethan rolls his eyes and mumbles something to himself. I pretend not to hear. Heather arrives at 5 o'clock. She flies into the house in a hurry, as usual. Tall, slender, with perfect hair and flawless makeup. Despite a long day at work, she looks as if she's just stepped out of a beauty parlor. Judith, thank you very much, she says, kissing me on the cheek. She smells of expensive perfume and antiseptic. You've been a great help. You're welcome, dear, I reply. The kids have eaten. Piper has done her homework. And Ethan? Heather asks, glancing toward the living room where her son is still sitting in front of the TV. He says he doesn't have any homework for today, but he does have a science test to study for. Heather sighs. I'll talk to him. Don't you want to stay for dinner? I ordered Chinese food. It'll be here soon. No thanks. I shake my head. I have plans. That's a lie. I don't have any plans except to go home, take a hot bath, and read the new detective I borrowed from the library. But I know Heather is offering out of politeness, not because she really wants me to stay. Besides, I've seen the way Quentin wrinkles his nose when I stay longer than necessary. At home, I turn on the radio and start cooking dinner. I rarely cook for myself. I usually make do with salad or soup from a can. But tonight, I want something special, so I take a chicken breast out of the freezer and decide to make chicken curry, the dish Edmund loves so much. While the chicken defrosts, I sit down at the kitchen table and go through the mail. It's mostly bills and flyers. But there is one letter from my friend Eloise, who moved to Florida after her husband died. She writes that she has bought a small house near the ocean and invites me to stay. Judith, you'll love it here, she writes. Sun, ocean, no cold winters, and no obligations to children and grandchildren. I'm finally living for myself. I smile as I picture Eloise on the beach. We've been friends since college, and I've always admired her courage and independence. She was the first of us to decide to divorce when her husband started cheating on her. The first to buy her own house after the divorce. And now, at 69, she is starting a new life in Florida. I reply to her that I will definitely come visit as soon as I am free of my responsibilities to my grandchildren. But deep down, I know that's not likely to happen anytime soon. Quentin and Heather are too dependent on my help with the kids, though they never admit it out loud. In the evening, Quentin calls. It's rare. Usually he texts or asks Heather to call me if they need anything. Hi, Mom. His voice sounds strained. How are you? Fine, thanks, I reply, wondering what he needed. How are you? Work, kids? Everything's fine, he pauses. Listen, Mom, I've been meaning to ask. You and Dad had some kind of financial cushion for your old age, right? That's it, money talk. I should have known. Yes, we had savings, I answer cautiously. Why? I was just thinking. He clears his throat. Heather and I were looking at a new house, bigger than this one, with a pool and a playroom for the kids. But we don't have enough for a down payment. I remain silent, waiting for him to continue. And I thought, he continues, maybe you could help us out. It's for your grandchildren. They'd each have their own room, and there'd be room for you if you wanted to stay the night. Quentin, I say slowly, I have some savings, but they are for my old age, in case I get sick or need special care. But Mom, he says, a hint of irritation in his voice, you don't need a house that big. You could sell it, buy something smaller, and split the difference. Some for your old age, some for us to buy a new house. That's it. Now the conversation has turned to my house. I should have seen this coming. Quentin and Heather have been hinting for years that I should optimize my life. I like my house, I say firmly. Your father and I picked it out together, paying the mortgage for years. Every corner of it reminds me of him. Mom, it's been 3 years. I hear impatience in his voice. You can't live in the past forever. Think about the future, your future, our future. You'd be much more comfortable in an apartment in a care home. No gardening, no repairs, and medical care close by. I'm 68, not 88. My voice shakes with indignation. I'm doing just fine on my own, and I'm not going to move into a nursing home. It's not a nursing home, Mom, he sighs, as if he's explaining something obvious to a small child. It's a state-of-the-art complex for active retirees. There's a pool, a gym, hobby groups. Quentin, I try to speak calmly, I appreciate your concern, but I don't want to move. And I can't give you money for a new house. I don't have much in savings myself. There is a heavy silence. I can almost physically feel his disappointment. Okay, he says at last. I get it, I'm sorry to bother you. He hangs up without waiting for me to answer. I sit there staring at the phone in my hand and I can feel the heaviness building up inside. It's always like this. The minute I refuse to honor his request, he shuts down like an oyster. He was the same way when I was a kid. If he didn't get what he wanted, he'd take offense and not talk to me for days. I get up and walk over to the window. It's already dark outside, and the lights are on in the windows of the neighboring houses. I see silhouettes of people moving behind the curtains. Families gathering for dinner, parents helping their children with homework, spouses watching the evening news. Ordinary, everyday life. Life that I once had too. I go back into the kitchen and finish dinner. The chicken curry doesn't taste as good as it usually does, probably because I cooked it in frustration. I eat mechanically, not tasting the flavor, thinking about the conversation with my son. It's not that I don't want to help Quentin and his family, but I am frustrated by the way he takes me and my resources for granted, as a means to his ends. He never asks what I want, what my plans for the future are. He simply assumes that at my age, the only possible plan is to live out my life in a nursing home while he enjoys living in my house or spending the money from its sale. After dinner, I pour myself a glass of wine, a small weakness I allow myself once a week. Edmund always said red wine was good for the heart, and we often had a glass in the evening discussing the day gone by. I raise my glass to the picture of my husband on the mantelpiece. Here's to you, darling, I say quietly. I wish you could see what our son has become. I know Edmund would be upset to see the way Quentin treats me. He always taught him to respect his elders, to be grateful for what you have, and to never take people for granted. Apparently, those lessons were not learned. The next day is Thursday, which means I have to sit with Lily. I arrive at Quentin and Heather's house by 8 in the morning. Heather opens the door. She's all ready for the day. Flawless makeup, stylish suit, hairstyled hair to hair. Good morning, Judith, she says as she lets me into the house. Lily is still eating breakfast. I left a to-do list on the refrigerator. Oh yes, and please don't give her sweets. She had a tantrum before bed last night, and we suspect it was the sugar. I nod, even though I know that Lily's tantrum is unlikely to be sugar-related. It's probably because she only sees her mom for an hour a day, between when she gets home from work and when she goes to bed. Also, Heather adds as she throws on her coat, Quentin and I are going to be late tonight. We have a meeting with the Realtor about the new house. You'll be able to stay longer, right? I hold back a sigh. Surely they wouldn't have delayed the viewing because of last night's conversation. Of course, I reply. Don't worry. Thank you. You're a real treasure. Heather kisses me on the cheek and disappears out the door. I walk into the kitchen where Lily is sitting at the table, trying to catch the cereal in the milk with her spoon. When she sees me, she smiles widely, showing off her milk mustache. Grandma, she shouts and stretches her arms toward me. I hug her, feeling my heart fill with warmth. This is what I put up with everything else for. These moments of pure, genuine love. The day goes by with the usual chores. We play, read books, walk in the park, cook dinner. Lily is an inquisitive and active child. She is never bored. By 3 o'clock, she gets tired and falls asleep on the couch while watching a cartoon. I cover her with a plaid and sit next to her, watching the news on my tablet. The phone rings. It's Quentin. Mom, he says without preamble, Heather and I are at the house we want to buy. The realtor says there's another family interested in buying and we need to decide quickly. I was wondering, maybe you'd reconsider helping out after all. I feel a wave of irritation rising inside. Quentin, I already told you yesterday. Yes, I know, he interrupts. But I thought maybe you changed your mind. This house is perfect for us. And for you too, by the way. There's a separate guest room on the first floor with its own bathroom. You wouldn't have to climb the stairs. I'm not going to live with you, I say firmly. And I can't give you money for a down payment. I need my savings. Mom, you're becoming unbearable, he says with obvious irritation in his voice. We're offering you the perfect deal, and you're being stubborn. What do you want? For me and the kids to live in cramped quarters while you occupy the whole house by yourself? Quentin, I don't have to. You know what? He's interrupting me again. Forget it. We can do this without your help. I just don't understand why you're so selfish. He hangs up, and I'm left sitting there, staring at the phone, feeling a lump in my throat. Selfish. My son thinks I'm selfish because I won't give him my savings or sell the house so he can buy a new, bigger one with a pool. Saturday started as usual. I woke up, made myself some tea, and started reading a new detective novel. The day promised to be quiet and peaceful. After a week spent with my grandchildren, I needed some solitude to regain my strength. The weather was clear, and I planned to work in the garden in the afternoon. The rose bushes needed pruning, and the flower beds needed weeding. At 11:30, I heard the sound of a car pulling up. Looking out the window, I saw Quentin's shiny black SUV parked in front of my house. It was strange. Usually my son would give me a heads up about his visits, especially on the weekends. Even stranger was the fact that not only Heather got out of the car, but also some strange woman with a bulky folder in her hands. I opened the door before they even rang the bell. Quentin? Heather? Is something wrong? I asked, trying to hide my anxiety. The thought flashed through my mind. Is it something with the kids? It's okay, Mom, Quentin said, kissing my cheek. We thought we'd stop by while the kids are in their classes. We want to talk about something. They walked into the house. Heather smiled her professional smile at me, the same smile she uses for coworkers and strangers. Judith, meet Olivia Taft, Heather introduced the stranger. She's an interior designer who works with our friends, the Cormacks. You remember their house? The one with the amazing kitchen island. I vaguely remembered the Cormacks' house. We'd been to their house for Christmas dinner last year. The house was stylish, but a little too sterile for my taste, like no one lived there. Nice to meet you, I said, shaking Olivia's hand. She was younger than Heather, with a fashionable haircut and expensive but discreet clothes. Likewise, Mrs. Woolpool, she said. Your son has told me so much about your home. I look forward to seeing it. I glanced questioningly at Quentin. He coughed nervously. Let's go into the living room, he said, heading into the back of the house as confidently as if it were his own. Mom, will you make us some coffee? It didn't sound like a question, but an order. I silently headed for the kitchen, trying to figure out what was going on. While I was making coffee, there were animated voices coming from the living room. I heard phrases like space potential, remove those old panels, and completely remodel the kitchen. When I returned with my tray, I found Olivia taking pictures of my living room on her phone. Heather was at the window, critically examining the curtains, and Quentin was pacing around the room, pointing out various interior details. And those bookshelves will certainly have to go, he said. They make the room look cramped and dark. I apologize, I interjected, setting the tray on the coffee table. But what exactly is going on? All three of them turned to me as if they'd just remembered I existed. Mom, Quentin smiled, that special smile he used when he wanted to convince me of something. We've decided to help you with the renovations. The house needs updating, you can see that. Olivia is the best designer in town, and she agreed to look at your house and suggest renovation options. But I didn't ask for renovations, I objected. I like my house the way it is. Mom, that's very nice, but honestly, everything in here is outdated. Quentin made a sweeping gesture across the room. The wiring, the plumbing, the finishes, everything needs updating. It's not just a matter of aesthetics, but safety as well. Mrs. Woolpool, Olivia intervened, your house has excellent potential. With the right approach, we could increase its value by 30 to 40%. It's a very good investment. An investment? I interjected. I'm not going to sell the house. Not now, of course, Heather said quickly. But in the future, when you decide it's time to move to a smaller place, or maybe a retirement community. I looked at the three of them, suddenly feeling like a stranger in my own home. They were discussing the future of my house as if I had already signed the papers to sell it, or worse, as if I were no longer alive. I'm not moving anywhere, I said firmly, and I don't need repairs. If the wiring or plumbing needs updating, I'll call in the experts myself. Mom, Quentin rolled his eyes like he used to do when he was a teenager, when he thought I was hopelessly out of touch with life. You don't understand. It's not just a renovation, it's a complete overhaul. Olivia is proposing to transform your home into a modern, functional space. Imagine, open floor plan, smart home, everything controlled from your phone. Lights, heating, security. I don't want an open floor plan, I objected. And I don't want to control the house from my phone. I like my light switches and the thermostat on the wall. Judith, Heather said softly, we just want you to live in comfort and safety. Modern technology can be very helpful to a person at your age. My age, I repeated slowly. What age? Well, you know. Heather hesitated. When you start to forget things, when it's harder to manage the day-to-day. I don't have dementia, Heather, I said sharply. I'm perfectly capable of handling my own affairs. I've been an accountant for 30 years, and I still remember the phone numbers of all my friends and the birthdays of all my relatives, including your parents, whom you forget to contact even on holidays. Heather blushed and turned away. Quentin stepped forward, his face hard. Don't talk to Heather like that, he said in a quiet, threatening tone. She cares for you more than you deserve. Cares? I felt a wave of anger rising inside me. You call that caring? Barging into my house unannounced with some designer and planning how to remodel my house without asking my opinion? We're asking your opinion right now, Quentin exclaimed. But you're stubborn as always and refuse to see that we want what's best for us. What's best for whom? I asked. For me or for you? Because I think you've already mentally moved into this house and are dividing up my possessions. What nonsense! Quentin raised his voice. We just want to help you renovate the house. What if I told you I don't want any help? That I like my house the way it is? Then I'll say you're a selfish old woman who's too hung up on the past. Quentin blurted out, his face red with anger. This isn't Father's house anymore, Mother. He's been gone for 3 years. It's time to move on. There was a heavy silence in the room. Olivia looked extremely uncomfortable. Heather was staring at the floor and Quentin was breathing heavily, clenching and unclenching his fists. I think you should leave, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. We're not going anywhere until we discuss this like adults, Quentin said stubbornly. Olivia's made time for us, and we're going to look around the house and make a plan for repairs. No, you're not doing that. I stood right in front of him. This is my house, Quentin. It's mine, not yours. And I decide what I do in it and when I do it. Oh, come on. He threw up his hands. We all know that sooner or later this house will be mine. Why put off the inevitable? You can't live here forever, Mom. There will come a time when you won't be able to look after the house, climb the stairs, manage the garden. And then what? Then I will decide for myself what to do, I replied. Now I'm going to ask you to leave. Maybe we should really come back another time, Heather suggested quietly, glancing at Olivia, who was already starting to put her papers back in the folder. No! Quentin slammed his fist down on the table, making the cups bounce. We'll discuss this now. I'm tired of your stubbornness, Mom. You live alone in a 4-bedroom house while we share a house half the size with 3 kids. It's illogical and selfish of you. I don't have to justify to you how I live, I replied, feeling my hands shaking. Your father and I earned this house. We paid the mortgage for 30 years. It's our house, not yours. Dad's gone, Quentin shouted. And we're here. You're real family. But you don't care about us. You only care about yourself. Quentin, Heather put her hand on his shoulder. Calm down. Let's go and talk about this later. No. He shook her hand off. I'm tired of being polite. Mom, either you agree to the repairs or what? I crossed my arms across my chest. What are you going to do, Quentin? His face contorted with rage, and for a moment I didn't recognize my son. A stranger, a hostile man stood before me. Or I'll prove you incompetent, he blurted out. You are living in the past, refusing help, not thinking about your safety. These are signs of dementia. I can get a medical report and get a guardianship. I felt a chill run down my spine. Is my own son threatening to declare me incompetent to take over my house? You wouldn't do that, I said, but my voice didn't sound as confident as I wanted it to. Test me. His eyes narrowed. Keep being stubborn and causing trouble, and you'll see what I'll do. Quentin! Heather exclaimed. You're out of line! No, she's out of line! He pointed his finger at me. Always telling us how to raise our children, criticizing our lifestyle, and now she's refusing to help us. I'm tired of it. He turned to me, his face contorted with anger. Either you agree to the repairs and start acting reasonable, or I will call the police and tell them you are inadequate and a danger to yourself. Who do you think they'll believe? A successful businessman or a stubborn old woman who can't let go of the past? Minus Mr. Woolpool, Olivia intervened, clearly shocked by what was happening. I think I'd better leave. We can discuss the project later, when everyone has calmed down. No, stay! Quentin grabbed her arm. We're not leaving until we've looked all over the house. Mom is just making a scene as usual. She likes to be the center of attention. Quentin, I'm asking you one last time, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Get out of my house now. Or what? He grinned. What are you going to do, Mom? Call the police? Kick your own son out? If I have to, yes. Then do it. He pulled out his cell phone and handed it to me. Make the call. I wonder what they'll say when they get here and see that we're just helping an elderly mother with repairs and she's throwing a tantrum. They'll think you need psychiatric help. At that moment, something changed inside me. Cold clarity replaced the shock and anger. I looked at my son, and for the first time I saw him for what he is, a greedy, selfish man who sees me not as a mother, but as an obstacle to what he wants. Leave or I'll call the police, I said calmly. Call! He was almost shouting now. Go away or I'll call the police. This is how a mother talks to her son now. That's fine. That's just fine. I didn't say anything else. I just turned around, grabbed my bag from the hall table, and walked out of the house. Behind me, I could hear Quentin continuing to yell something, Heather trying to calm him down, but I didn't turn around. I got into my car and pulled onto the road, not having a clear plan of where I was going. I drove, mechanically performing the usual actions, honking at turns, stopping at traffic lights, letting pedestrians pass. There was an emptiness inside me. I felt no anger, no resentment, no fear, only a huge, all-consuming fatigue. Without realizing it, I found myself on a quiet street in the old part of town, in front of a small red brick office building. The sign above the entrance read, Radcliffe and Associates, Real Estate. I parked and stayed sitting in the car looking at this building. The name Radcliffe was familiar to me. Kyle Radcliffe, I'd met him at the funeral of Sarah Tilden, an old friend of mine 6 months ago. He was selling her house for the heirs. We talked a bit at the wake, and he gave me his business card, just like that, for no particular reason, as they often do at such events. If you ever decide to move or alternatively buy something, give me a call, he said then. I pulled my wallet out of my purse and, rummaging through it, found a business card. Kyle Radcliffe, a realtor with 30 years of experience, specializes in luxury real estate and retirement homes. I stared at the card, and slowly a plan began to form in my head. Not just a plan to escape from today's situation, but a plan for the future. A plan that would allow me to live the life I wanted without the constant pressure and manipulation from Quentin. I pulled out my cell phone and dialed the number on the business card. After the third ring, a man's voice answered, Kyle Radcliffe speaking. Minus Mr. Radcliffe, I said, surprised at how calm my voice sounded. This is Judith Woolpool. We met at Sarah Tilden's funeral. Mrs. Woolpool, of course I remember you. He sounded genuinely friendly. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I want to sell my house, I said, and I need your help. Sure, he replied. Would you like to make an appointment for a consultation? I have a window on Monday morning. No, I shook my head even though he couldn't see it. I want to start the process now. Can you meet with me today? There was a short pause. Actually, I'm in the office right now, he finally said. If you can come up, I'd be happy to consult with you. But selling a house is a big decision, Mrs. Woolpool. I usually recommend that you think it over carefully. I've already thought it through, I said firmly. And I'm at your office right now. Oh, he sounded surprised. Then come on in. I'm on the second floor, office 205. I got out of the car and headed towards the building. With every step, I felt my resolve growing. This was not an impulsive act as it might seem. It was a decision that had been maturing in me for a long time, and today's incident was simply the last straw. As I walked up the stairs to Kyle Radcliffe's office, I thought about what Quentin would say when he found out I'd put the house on the market. He'd be furious, of course. He'd yell, threaten, try to pressure me. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control of the situation. I knocked on the door labeled 205 and heard the invitation to enter. Kyle Radcliffe rose from his desk to greet me, a tall, trim man about my age, with gray hair and kind eyes. "Mrs. Woolpool, it's good to see you, though the circumstances are not the most pleasant." He shook my hand and pointed to the chair in front of his desk. "Please, have a seat. Would you like coffee, tea?" "No, thank you." I sat down in the chair with my bag on my lap. "I want to discuss the sale of my house. How quickly can I do that?" He looked at me carefully, and I saw understanding in his eyes. He must have met many people in situations like mine in his long career. "It depends on a lot of factors," he said, sitting back down at the table. "The condition of the house, its location, market conditions, your price expectations. But before we start discussing the details, let me ask you this. Are you sure you want to sell the house? Sometimes people make these decisions in the moment and then regret it." I looked him straight in the eye. "Minus Mr. Radcliffe, I've never been so sure of anything in my life." He nodded as if accepting my answer. "Good. Then let's get started. Tell me about your house." And I began to tell him about the 4 bedrooms, the 2 bathrooms, the large kitchen and the spacious living room, the garden with the rose bushes I'd been growing for 20 years, the 2-car garage and the basement where Edmund had set up a workshop, about the neighborhood where the house was located, quiet, green with good schools and proximity to shopping and parks. Kyle listened intently, taking notes. When I finished, he asked a few follow-up questions about the age of the house, the condition of the roof, electrical wiring, and plumbing. Then he turned on the computer and showed me similar homes that were for sale in my neighborhood and the prices they went for. "Based on your description and the market situation, your house could be worth between $700,000 and $800,000, he said. "But for a more accurate estimate, I would need to see it in person." "When could you show me the house?" I wondered. Quentin and his family usually came over for Sunday lunch every 2 weeks. The next visit would be tomorrow. But after today's incident, I doubted they would show up. On the other hand, I didn't want to take any chances. "Could we do it on Monday?" I asked. "Any time that suits you." "Monday works?" He checked the calendar on his computer. "How about 10 o'clock in the morning?" "Perfect." "Great." He made a note on his calendar. "Now tell me, where do you plan to move to after you sell the house? Do you have anything in mind?" I shook my head. "No, not yet. But I'm thinking of a small house somewhere on the coast. My friend Eloise recently moved to Florida and is very happy with it." "Florida is a great choice for retirees." Kyle nodded. "Warm climate, lots of senior communities, good medical care. Would you like me to put you in touch with my colleagues there? They could show you the options." "Yes, that would be wonderful." I felt the excitement growing inside me. For the first time in a long time, I was thinking about the future with optimism instead of anxiety. We discussed a few more details, the documents I would need to prepare, the sales strategy, possible timelines. Kyle was professional and attentive, not pushing or rushing, but not wasting time either. When I left his office an hour later, I had a folder of information and a preliminary contract for real estate services. We agreed that Kyle would inspect the house on Monday, and if everything was in order, we would sign the official contract and the house would be on the market the following week. As I got into the car, I felt the tension release for the first time that day. It was replaced by a strange, almost euphoric feeling of freedom. I made a decision and took the first step toward a new life. A life without constant pressure, without having to justify every decision I made, without being seen as a burden or an obstacle to someone else's plans. On Monday morning at 10 o'clock sharp, Kyle Radcliffe rang my doorbell. He looked professional, strict suit, neat briefcase, friendly smile. I walked him through the house, showing him each room, talking about recent renovations and layout features. Kyle listened attentively, taking notes and pictures. "The house is in great condition, Mrs. Woolpool," he said when we finished looking around and sat down in the kitchen. "You've taken good care of it over the years." Thank you. I poured us some tea. What do you think? How much could he be worth? Kyle pulled out his tablet and showed me a price comparison of similar houses in the neighborhood. Given the size, location, and condition, I'd recommend listing it for $750,000. That's a little above the average price, but your house is worth it. Plus, it gives us room to bargain. I nodded, mentally calculating what I could do with that amount of money. After paying all the taxes and commissions, I'd have enough left over to buy a small house by the ocean and have a decent amount in my bank account. When can we start? I asked. If you're ready to sign the contract today, I can advertise tomorrow, Kyle said, pulling a folder of paperwork out of his briefcase. We'll take professional photos, create an attractive description, and by the weekend, we'll probably have our first potential buyers. I signed the necessary papers, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and sadness. This house had witnessed so many events in my life. It was where Edmund and I had grown old together, where Quentin had spent his teenage years, where I had mourned the death of my husband. But it's time to move on. It would be best if you weren't home during the showings, Kyle said, gathering the paperwork. Potential buyers are more comfortable viewing the house without the owners present. Yeah, I understand, I nodded. Don't worry, I'll find something to do. After Kyle left, I walked around the house, trying to see it through the eyes of potential buyers. What needs to be cleaned? What needs to be fixed? What needs to be freshened up? I started making a to-do list, and it turned out to be pretty impressive. Over the next few days, I immersed myself in the work. I threw out old magazines and newspapers, sorted out closets, gave some of my stuff to a thrift store, hired a cleaning service to do a general clean, called a gardener to tidy up the rose garden and front lawn, replaced burned-out light bulbs, tightened loose knobs on lockers, painted the backyard fence. On Wednesday, a professional photographer came and took pictures for the ad. On Thursday, Kyle sent me a link to an online listing of my house. The photos were great. The house looked spacious, bright, and cozy. The description emphasized its virtues. Classic 4-bedroom family home in prestigious Falls Church neighborhood. Spacious kitchen, updated bathrooms, manicured garden with perennial roses, proximity to schools and parks. That same evening, Quentin called. I hadn't spoken to him since that ill-fated Saturday morning, though he'd left several messages on my answering machine, first angry, then more conciliatory. Hi, Mom. His voice sounded uncertain. How are you? Fine, thanks, I replied neutrally. How are you? I'm fine. Listen, about Saturday, I wanted to apologize. I overreacted. I said too much. I'm sorry. His apology didn't sound sincere, more like a formality, but I decided to let it go. Okay, I accept your apology, I said. So are we okay? He asked hopefully. The kids and I could stop by on Sunday for lunch, as usual. I wondered. I was due to open the house for viewing on Sunday, and Kyle had advised against being home at that time. Plus, I wasn't sure I was ready to see Quentin so soon after his outburst. It's not going to work this Sunday, I said. I have plans. Plans? There was surprise in his voice. What kind of plans? Personal, I answered shortly. Oh, okay. He sounded puzzled. Maybe next week then? We'll see. I didn't want to make any definite promises. I'll get back to you. After talking to Quentin, I felt strangely relieved. I hadn't lied to him outright, but I hadn't told him about selling the house either. Part of me felt guilty about it, but another part of me realized that now was not the time for dramatic explanations. Let things take their course. On Saturday, Kyle called with good news. We already have a few interested buyers, he reported. They want to see the house tomorrow during the opening. I expect good activity. Sunday's home opening was a success. I spent the day at my friend Beatrice's house, and when I returned in the evening, Kyle reported that 15 potential buyers had viewed the house, and 3 of them showed serious interest. I think we'll get our first offer this week, he said. I didn't make a mistake in choosing Kyle as my realtor. He worked efficiently and kept me informed of all the details. The first offer came in on Tuesday, $720,000 from a couple with 2 kids. We decided to wait a few more days, and it turned out to be the right decision. On Thursday, the second offer came in, $740,000 from a young couple expecting their firstborn. They fell in love with your rose garden, Kyle said. The wife said she'd always dreamed of a house with a rose garden. That touched me. It's nice to know that my roses will please their new owners. In the middle of the week, I started looking for a place to live for myself. Eloise sent me some links to homes in Florida, in a small coastal town where she had settled. I loved the small one-story house with a veranda overlooking the ocean. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a bright kitchen living room, and best of all, only a 5-minute walk from Eloise's house. It's perfect for you, Judith, Eloise said over the phone. Plenty of room for you and for guests if the grandchildren want to come, but not too big to make cleaning a chore. And the price is very reasonable at $420,000. I contacted a local realtor and he sent me more pictures and information about the house. The more I learned, the more I wanted to buy it. I started dreaming of waking up to the sound of the ocean, eating breakfast on the porch, walking on the beach at sunset. On Friday, the third offer on my house came in, $760,000, $10,000 above our asking price. An elderly couple whose children were grown wanted to move closer to their grandchildren, who lived in Falls Church. It's a great offer, Kyle said, and they can close the deal quickly since they're already pre-approved for a mortgage. What do you think? I didn't hesitate. Let's accept their offer. Kyle started doing the necessary paperwork, and I contacted a realtor in Florida and made an offer on that ocean house. Everything was happening so fast that sometimes I felt like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. Over the weekend, I started packing. Not everything, of course. I was still a few weeks away from closing the deal, but the items I would definitely need to take with me to Florida. Photo albums, favorite books, memorabilia. I decided that I would leave most of the furniture to the new owners. It had been chosen specifically for this house and was unlikely to fit my new home. On Sunday evening, Heather called. It was unusual. She usually preferred to communicate via text message. Judith, hi, she sounded nervous. How are you? Good, thanks, I replied, continuing to sort through the photos on the kitchen table. Listen, I'm calling about Quentin. He's still upset about your fight, though he won't admit it. He was expecting you to make up at Sunday dinner, but you canceled. And this time, too. He's starting to think you're avoiding him. I'm not avoiding him, Heather, I said, folding the photos neatly into an envelope. It's just that I've had a lot on my plate lately. Things? She sounded intrigued. What kind of things? I wasn't ready to reveal the truth, so I answered evasively. Just personal stuff, nothing special. I see. She obviously didn't believe me, but she didn't press. Anyway, I think Quentin would be pleased if you called him, or maybe we could come over to your place for dinner this week. The kids miss their grandmother. The thought of grandchildren made my heart squeeze. I really did miss them, especially little Lily. But I also knew that if I saw them now, I might flinch and tell them my plans ahead of time. Let's reschedule for next week, okay? I suggested. I'm really busy right now. Okay, Heather sounded disappointed. But are you okay? You're not sick or anything? No, I'm totally fine, I assured her. It's just, a lot to do. After talking to Heather, I felt a twinge of conscience. Maybe I was doing the wrong thing by keeping my plans from my family. But then I remembered Quentin yelling at me, threatening to call the police, calling me a selfish old woman. No, I'm doing the right thing. I have the right to dispose of my life and my property without his approval or permission. On Monday, I received the happy news that my offer on the Florida house had been accepted. Now I had to go through the formalities and sign the papers. The realtor told me that everything could be done remotely. I didn't even need to come to Florida before the closing. You can sign all the documents here in the presence of a notary and send them to us, he explained. And when you arrive, the keys will be waiting for you in my office. This news strengthened my resolve even more. Now I had a concrete plan, a concrete place to go. This was no longer a vague dream of moving somewhere away from Quentin. This was a real house in a real city, with the ocean outside my window and a girlfriend next door. That same day, I started researching moving companies that could move my belongings to Florida. I chose a few and requested quotes. I also started looking at furniture for the new house. Online stores offered many options, and I could order everything I needed with shipping directly to the new house. On Tuesday, Kyle brought the paperwork to sign. A pre-sale agreement with those elderly spouses. They wanted a quick closing in just a month, which suited me just fine. It meant that in 30 days, I'd be free of this house and all the memories associated with it. They're very nice people, Kyle said as I looked through the paperwork. Their names are Albert and Dorothy Pearson. They lived for 45 years in their previous home and are only moving because their daughter and children live here in Falls Church. I'm glad the house is going to good people, I said as I signed the papers. I hope they'll be happy here. That night I lay awake for a long time thinking about the changes that were coming. I remembered how Edmund and I had moved into the house, young and hopeful, with little Quentin. How we gradually furnished it, renovated it, turned it into a real family home. How Edmund built a swing for Quentin in the backyard. How we had barbecues for the neighbors every summer. How we celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. But then I thought about the future, the house by the ocean, the new friends I'd meet, the quiet life without the constant pressure of Quentin, and I was relieved. I wasn't betraying Edmund's memory by selling the house. He'd always said it's not where you live, but how you live, and I intended to live well, with dignity and on my own terms. On Wednesday, I had to go to the bank to discuss the details of transferring the money after the sale of the house. As I drove past Quentin and Heather's house, I saw Quentin just coming out of the house heading for his car. For a moment, I had the urge to stop and talk to him, to tell him about my plans. But I drove past without slowing down. It wasn't time yet. At the bank, they helped me get all the necessary paperwork to transfer the funds after the house was sold. Some of the money will be used to buy a new house in Florida. Some will be transferred to my local bank account there, and the rest will stay in my current account here in Falls Church until I decide what to do with it. You're making a big change in your life, Mrs. Woolpool, remarked the bank manager, a young man named Brandon. Moving to another state at your age is a bold move. You have to be brave at my age, I replied with a smile. Otherwise, the rest of your life will be spent regretting what you didn't do. When I got home, I found a message on my answering machine from Quentin. Mom, it's me. Heather and I are worried about you. You're not answering your cell phone, canceling our appointments. What's going on? If you're still mad about that designer incident, I already apologized. What else do you want me to say? Call me back, please. I erased the message without calling back. What could I say to him? I'm sorry, son, but I'm selling the house you dream of and moving to the other side of the country because you're treating me like a burden? No, that conversation could wait. Instead, I called Eloise and told her the latest news. You're doing the right thing, Judith, she said firmly. Your son has behaved terribly. He thinks of you as his property, not as an independent person. It's good for him to be taught a lesson. But I feel a little guilty hiding my plans from him, I admitted. Did he feel guilty when he yelled at you and threatened to call the police? Eloise asked. When he planned to renovate your house without your consent? When he hinted that it was time for you to move into a nursing home? No, I sighed. Of course not. Exactly, she said with steel in her voice. You don't owe anyone anything, Judith. It's your life, and you have every right to live it as you see fit. After talking to Eloise, I was relieved. She was always able to see the situation clearly, without the emotional clouds that so often affect family relationships. The next few days passed in a flurry of activity. I continued packing, making arrangements with the transportation company, closing utility bills, and arranging for mail forwarding to a new address. Each day brought me closer to my new life, and each day I felt more and more confident in my decision. Saturday was the final inspection of the house by the buyers. Albert and Dorothy Pearson turned out to be a really nice couple, polite, friendly, and enthusiastic about their new home. Your garden is amazing, Dorothy said as we walked around the yard. I've always wanted a rose garden, but our previous house had too much shade. Roses require attention, but they're worth it, I replied, showing her my favorite bushes. This white one is 20 years old, can you believe it? I brought it back from the nursery when it was no taller than a pencil. Don't worry, I'll take care of it, Dorothy promised, gently touching the snow-white flower. Albert was more interested in the technical aspects of the house, the heating system, air conditioning, the condition of the roof. But he also found time to express his admiration. You have a beautiful house, Mrs. Woolpool, he said, shaking my hand in farewell. We promised to take good care of it. After they left, I felt a strange relief. The house would pass into good hands, it would be loved and appreciated. That was important to me. On Sunday, Kyle brought in the final papers to sign. Everything was ready for the closing, which was to take place in 2 weeks. I also got the paperwork from the Realtor in Florida. My purchase was also moving along smoothly, and the closing was scheduled for the same day as the sale of this house. Everything is coming together perfectly, Kyle said, as he gathered up the signed paperwork. You sell one house and buy another on the same day. It's like a movie. Yeah, it's a weird feeling, I admitted. Like someone had scripted my life and everything was going exactly according to plan. You still haven't told your family? He asked cautiously. I shook my head. I know I should, but every time I think about this conversation, I feel bad. I understand, Kyle nodded. But maybe it's better to tell them before the deal closes so that they have time to get used to the idea. I knew he was right. Quentin would be furious when he found out I'd sold the house without consulting him, without offering to buy it, without asking his permission. But the longer I put off having this conversation, the harder it was to start it. I'll think about it, I promised Kyle. Maybe next week. After Kyle left, I sat in the living room for a long time, looking at the pictures I hadn't packed yet. Edmund on our wedding day with a wide smile and a twinkle in his eye. Quentin in his graduation robe, proud of his diploma. My grandchildren in last year's Christmas photo. My family. Despite everything that had happened, they were still my family. But they were not my owners, had no right to dictate how I should live my life. And if Quentin couldn't understand that, if he only saw me as a hindrance to his plans or, at best, a free babysitter for his children, then maybe the distance between us would be good for our relationship. Maybe when I lived in Florida, he would begin to appreciate my time and attention that he now took for granted. Either way, I knew I was doing the right thing. I deserved a quiet, happy life on my terms, and if that required selling the house and moving to the other side of the country, I was willing to do it. With that thought in mind, I got up to continue packing. In 2 weeks, I would sign the papers to sell the house and a new chapter of my life would begin. A chapter I would write on my own without anyone else's interference or approval. I stood in Kyle Radcliffe's office looking at the papers I had just signed. Officially, the house no longer belonged to me. It had passed into the possession of Albert and Dorothy Pearson, the elderly couple who had expressed such genuine enthusiasm for my rose garden. I felt strangely light at heart, as if I'd shed a heavy backpack I'd been carrying for years. Congratulations, Mrs. Woolpool. Kyle shook my hand. The deal is closed. The money will be wired to your account within 24 hours. Thanks for everything, Kyle, I smiled. You've made this process a lot easier than I expected. That's my job, he smiled back. What about your purchase in Florida? Did everything go smoothly? Yes, I just got confirmation from the realtor there. The house is officially mine. The keys will be waiting for me at his office when I visit next week. That's great! Kyle handed me a folder with copies of all the documents. Keep them in a safe place. Have you told your son yet? I shook my head. Eli N. I know I should have, but every time I was going to do it, something stopped me. I understand. Kyle nodded. Family relationships can be complicated. But now that the deal is closed, maybe it's time? Yeah, you're right. I'll tell him today. As I walked out of Kyle's office, I felt a mixture of emotions. Relief at the closing of the deal, excitement at the impending move to Florida, and anxiety at the inevitable conversation with Quentin. I decided not to put it off and dialed his number as soon as I got in the car. The call went to voicemail. Quentin was probably at work and couldn't answer. Quentin, it's Mom, I said after the tone. I need to talk to you about something important. Please call me back when you can. I spent the rest of the day packing the last of the things I was going to take with me to Florida. The shipping company was scheduled to arrive in 2 days to pick up my boxes. Under the terms of my contract with the Pearsons, I had 5 days to completely vacate the house. In the evening, as I was having tea in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Opening it, I saw Mrs. Collins, my neighbor on my right, with whom we often exchanged recipes and gardening tips. Judith, dear, she looked worried. Is it true you sold the house? I saw the realtor taking down the for sale sign this afternoon. I sighed. Of course, in a neighborhood like ours, news travels fast. Yes, Martha, it's true. I'm moving to Florida. Bought a little house by the ocean. But, why? She seemed genuinely puzzled. You never said you wanted to move. And what about Quentin and the kids? Are they moving too? No, they're staying here. I smiled, trying to look carefree. I just decided it was time to start a new chapter in my life. Eloise, do you remember my friend from college? She moved to Florida a year ago and she's very happy. I bought a house near her. Oh, Martha shook her head. Quentin must be upset. He always said how much he loved this house. Yes, well, I didn't know what to say. Life is full of changes, isn't it? Martha talked some more about the weather and her grandchildren and how much she would miss me and then left, no doubt to break the news to the other neighbors. I closed the door and leaned my back against it, feeling tired. Now that the neighbors knew, it was only a matter of time before the news reached Quentin. I wasn't wrong. About an hour later, my phone rang. It was Quentin. Mom? His voice sounded strange. I just got a call from Mrs. Norton. She said you sold the house. Is this some kind of stupid joke? Mrs. Norton lived 3 houses down from me and was a well-known gossip in the neighborhood. Of course, she couldn't help calling Quentin with such juicy news. No, Quentin, this isn't a joke. I took a deep breath. I really did sell the house. The deal closed this morning. There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. You, what? He finally squeezed out. You sold the house? Without my knowledge? Without discussing it with me? Yes, I answered simply. But how could you? His voice began to rise. This house? It's our family home. I grew up in it. How could you just sell it without consulting me? Quentin, I left you a message today. I wanted to discuss it with you. After you sold the house? He was almost shouting now. What's the point? What are you going to do? Where are you going to move? I bought a house in Florida, I said calmly. It's small but very nice near the ocean. Not far from Eloise. Florida? He sounded like I was saying I was moving to Mars. Are you kidding? You're going to move to another state without even discussing it with us? What about the kids? What about Lily? You know she cried last week because she didn't see you? The mention of Lily pricked my heart, but I didn't let myself give in to emotional blackmail. I'll miss the kids, Quentin, but I'm not disappearing off the face of the earth. There are phones, video calls, and you can always come visit. I'll have plenty of room for all of you. Mom, you don't understand. His voice shook with restrained rage. We can't just get on a plane whenever we want. I have work. The kids have school. Why the hell did you even decide to leave? What happened to you? Nothing happened to me, Quentin, I answered, trying to stay calm. I just decided it was time to live for myself. For the last 30 years, I've lived for others, for you, for your father, for your children. Now it's my time. Is this about the designer thing? He lowered his voice. Mother, I've already apologized for that. I was wrong, I admit it. But selling the house, move to another state, it's too much. It wasn't just that case, Quentin, I sighed. It was just the last straw. You've long treated me not as a mother, but as a free babysitter and an obstacle to what you want. What? That's not true, he exclaimed. How can you say such a thing? I have always cared for you. Have you? I felt my irritation growing. Then why do you keep insinuating that it's time for me to move to a smaller place? Why do you ask for money for your new house without thinking that I might need it myself? Why do you bring in a designer to plan renovations to my house without asking my opinion? There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Quentin spoke, his voice cold and calculating. You sold the house. How much did you get for it? The question caught me off guard with its directness. It's none of your business, Quentin. None of my business? He laughed without mirth. It's the family home, Mom. The house I grew up in, my father's house. And you say it's none of my business? It was my home, Quentin. I tried to speak calmly but firmly. Mine and your father's. We bought it. We paid the mortgage for 30 years. When your father died, it passed to me. It was my property, and I had every right to dispose of it as I saw fit. But you should have offered it to me. His voice shook with indignation. If you decided to sell it, you should have asked me if I wanted to buy it first. Could you afford it? I asked bluntly. Well, maybe not right away, he stammered. But we could work something out. You could give me time to raise the money, or we could arrange an installment plan, or. Quentin, I interrupted him, you told me yourself that you don't have enough for a down payment on a new house. How would you be able to buy this one, which costs 1.5 times as much? So that's how? His voice turned icy. You chose to sell the house to strangers instead of helping your own son? I don't have to give you my property, Quentin, I said tiredly. And frankly, after the way you've been treating me lately, I'm not sure I want to. What are you talking about? I've always been a good son. I visited you, I called you, I took care of you. When you needed something, I finished for him. When you needed a nanny for the kids, or money for a new house, or when you wanted to renovate my house because you already thought it was yours. It's not fair, Mom. He was almost screaming. I did all this for you? A new house would have been better for you, with a room on the first floor so you wouldn't have to climb the stairs. Renovations would have made your home more modern and safer. I was thinking of you. No, Quentin. I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. You were thinking of yourself, about how convenient it would be to have me around to babysit, about how nice it would be to have my house after I moved to a smaller place. You never asked what I wanted. You just assumed that at my age I should be grateful for any attention and willing to give everything I have. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could only hear Quentin's heavy breathing. I can't believe it, he said finally. You sold the house without consulting me. You moved to another state without thinking of your grandchildren. And now you're accusing me of being a bad son? After everything I've done for you? I didn't say you were a bad son, Quentin. I sighed. I'm just saying that you've stopped seeing me as a person with my own desires and rights. You only see me as a resource to be used. That's ridiculous, he snorted. You know what? Do whatever you want. Move to Florida, live among old people, forget about your family. But don't expect us to visit you or video call you every week. You've made your choice. With those words, he hung up. I sat looking at the phone in my hand for a long time. I expected the conversation to be difficult, but the reality was even worse. Quentin wasn't just upset or disappointed, he was furious. And worst of all, he saw nothing wrong with my behavior. In his eyes, I was an ungrateful mother who had betrayed her family by selling the house and deciding to live her own life. I put the kettle on and made myself a cup of chamomile tea, trying to calm down. Just as I sat down at the table, the phone rang again. This time, it was Heather. Judith? Her voice sounded tense. Is it true? You sold the house? Yes, Heather, it's true, I replied, preparing for another round of accusations. And you're moving to Florida? She sounded like she couldn't believe it. Yeah, I bought a little house near the ocean. I'm moving next week. But, why? She sounded genuinely confused. You never said you wanted to leave. What happened? I sighed. Heather had always been more sensible than Quentin, more able to see things from different angles. A lot of things, Heather. But most importantly, I realized that I wanted to live for myself. For the last few years, I had existed only as a grandmother to your children, as a potential source of money for your new home, as an obstacle to what Quentin thought was rightfully his. That's not true, Judith, she objected, but without much conviction. We appreciate everything you do for us. You're an important part of our family. Are you? I couldn't hold back a bitter chuckle. Then why does Quentin keep insinuating that it's time for me to move into a nursing home? Why do you both take it for granted that I'll babysit anytime you need me to? Why are you bringing a designer into my house without asking my opinion? Heather was silent for a while. I realize it seemed wrong, she finally said. And I'm sorry if we made you feel unappreciated, but moving so far away, the kids are going to miss you, especially Lily. I'll miss them too, Heather, I said softer. They can come visit me for the vacations and we can have video calls. Quentin is very upset, she said after a pause. He feels like you betrayed him. I know, but I didn't betray him, Heather. I just decided to live my own life, not the one he had planned for me. He needs time to cool off, she sighed. He's always been a lot like his father, stubborn and hot-tempered. But he loves you, Judith. He just doesn't know how to show it properly. I love him too, Heather. He's my son. But love doesn't mean I have to sacrifice my happiness for his comfort. We talked some more. Heather was more understanding than Quentin, but I felt like she didn't fully support my decision either. In her eyes, being a grandmother should have been a priority in my life, and my choice to move to Florida was selfish. After talking to Heather, I checked my email and found a message from Quentin. It had been sent just a few minutes ago. Mom, I still can't believe you did this. Sold the house I grew up in, the house where the memories of Dad are buried, the house that was supposed to pass to me and my children one day. You sold it to strangers without offering it to me, without asking my opinion, without even letting me know your plans. You say I didn't see you as a man of your own desires. But did you see me as a son who has a right to know about such important decisions? Did you think about my feelings, the feelings of my children? You accuse me of thinking your house was mine. But it was mine, in the sense that it was my childhood home, my father's home, my family's home. You robbed us of that home, that part of our history. You say you want to live for yourself. Well, congratulations, you got what you wanted. Now you're free of your obligations to your family, free from having to be around grandchildren who love you and need you. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that. Not for selling the house, although that hurts too, but for the fact that you didn't see fit to even discuss it with me. For putting your own desires above the well-being of your family. I hope you'll be happy in Florida. I really hope so, because the price of that happiness is a relationship with your son and his family. Quentin. I reread the letter several times, feeling tears come to my eyes. Quentin was right about one thing. I hadn't discussed my decision to sell the house with him. I should have, if only out of respect for his feelings and memories associated with the place. But other than that, he just couldn't or wouldn't understand my point of view. It was unfathomable to him that I could want anything other than the role of grandmother, always available to his children, or the keeper of the house he considered his inheritance. I began writing a response, erasing and rewriting phrases several times. How do I explain to my son that I love him, but I don't want to live his ideas of what my life should be? How do I convey that I value my grandchildren but don't want them to be the only meaning of my existence? Dear Quentin, I understand your pain and frustration. I should have discussed selling the house with you, and I regret not doing so. You're right. It was your childhood home, and you had a right to know my plans. But I don't agree that I put my own desires ahead of the family's well-being. Quentin, being part of a family doesn't mean giving up your own life. It doesn't mean always being available when you need a babysitter for the kids. It doesn't mean giving you your home just because you think it is rightfully yours. I love you and your children. I will always be your family no matter where I live. But I am also a human being with my own dreams and plans. And right now, I want to live the life I've always dreamed of. In a little house by the ocean, with the ability to wake up to the sound of the waves and fall asleep under a starry sky. You say that the price of my happiness is my relationship with you and your family. But it's not. Those relationships are in your hands. You may decide that my life should revolve around you and turn your back on me because I've chosen a different path. Or you can realize that I'm entitled to my own decisions and keep us connected despite the distance. The choice is yours, Quentin. I'll be waiting for you and the kids in Florida when you're ready to come. Love, Mom? I reread the letter several times before hitting send. I didn't know if Quentin could understand my point of view, but I did my best to explain my feelings. I spent the rest of the evening packing the last of my things and thinking about the conversation with Quentin. His reaction was expected, but that didn't make it any less painful. I hoped that in time he would be able to, if not accept, at least come to terms with my decision. But even if he didn't, I didn't regret my choice. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living my own life, not the one others expected of me. Before going to bed, I looked at pictures of my new home in Florida. Bright rooms, a cozy porch, an ocean view. A new life awaited me, and I was ready for it, despite the pain of parting with the past and the uncertainty of a future relationship with my son. My phone buzzed, alerting me to a new email. It was a reply from Quentin, short and cold. I can't believe you can't see how selfish you are being. But you're right about one thing. The choice is mine. And I choose not to do business with a man who so easily discards his family for some dream of an ocean house. Good luck in Florida. I closed the letter, feeling my heart clench. But even through the pain, I felt a strange calm. Quentin was a grown man, capable of making his own decisions. I couldn't control his reactions, I could only control my actions. And I chose to live my life the way I thought was right for me, even if it meant a temporary separation from my son. Tomorrow begins a new day, another step toward my new life. And who knows, maybe someday Quentin will realize that my decision wasn't against him, that I didn't reject him or his children. I simply chose me, and there was nothing wrong with that. The coastal Florida town of Pine Haven greeted me with a gentle sun and a warm breeze off the ocean. When I stepped out of the cab in front of my new home, the first thing I smelled was the smell of salt water and blooming oleanders. The little one-story house with white walls and blue shutters looked just like it did in the photos, only even more cozy and inviting. Eloise was waiting for me on the veranda, sitting in a wicker rocking chair with 2 glasses of lemonade. "Welcome home, Judith." She rose to meet me, spreading her arms for a hug. I hugged my friend, feeling the tension of the last few weeks begin to let go. Everything, the sale of the house, the conflict with Quentin, the long journey, all that was behind me. A new chapter of my life was opening before me. "I have the keys." Eloise waved the keychain. "The realtor gave them to me yesterday. Do you want to see the house first? Or do you want to rest first?" "The house first," I smiled. "I can't wait to see it from the inside." We walked up the 3 steps to the veranda, and Eloise ceremoniously handed me the keys. "Your domain, your keys, your life," she said with a smile. I opened the door and stepped inside. A spacious living room with panoramic windows overlooking the ocean, a bright kitchen with a breakfast bar, 3 cozy bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It was exactly as I'd imagined. But the reality was even better than the pictures. The light coming through the large windows gave the rooms a special glow, and the sound of the waves coming from the beach made the rooms feel close to nature. "What do you think?" Eloise asked when we had finished looking around. "It's perfect," I said, not hiding my excitement. "Just perfect." That same day, a truck arrived with my belongings, the few pieces of furniture I'd decided to take with me, boxes of books, photo albums, and memorabilia. Eloise helped me unpack and put everything in its place. By evening, the house looked settled, although there were still many items missing. "Tomorrow we'll go shopping," Eloise said as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset over the ocean. "You need to buy a bunch of stuff for the house." "Yeah," I nodded, sipping my cool lemonade. "But I already have the essentials: a bed, a table, a couple chairs. The rest can be added gradually." "How are you feeling?" Eloise asked, looking at me carefully. "After everything that happened with Quentin," I sighed. The pain from the last conversation with my son was still fresh. Sad, of course, but I don't regret my decision. Maybe he's right and I was selfish. But don't I deserve a little selfishness after all these years? "Of course you do," Eloise said firmly. "You gave him the best years of your life. You were there for him when he needed help with the kids. You've always supported him. Now it's your time, Judith. And if he can't understand that, that's his problem, not yours." I nodded, looking up at the pinking sky. Eloise was right. I deserved this new life. And though I miss my grandchildren and even Quentin, I couldn't let their resentment steal the joy of this new beginning from me. The first weeks in Pine Haven flew by with the hassle of setting up house and getting to know the town. Eloise introduced me to some of her friends who were also retirees who had moved here from different parts of the country. Linda and George Thompson, a married couple from Chicago, invited us to a barbecue in their backyard. Arthur Livingston, a former literature professor from Boston, organized a book club, which I happily joined. Susan Chen, an energetic widow from San Francisco, led a yoga group on the beach in the mornings. I quickly became embedded in the local community. Morning yoga, afternoon walks on the beach, evening gatherings with new friends. My life was filled with new rituals and activities. On Tuesdays, I started taking cooking classes at the local community center where we learned how to prepare fresh seafood dishes. Thursdays, I took watercolor classes taught by Arthur in his spacious garage converted into a studio. The ocean became my daily companion. Every morning I woke to the sound of the waves. Every evening I fell asleep to their lulling melody. I loved long walks along the shore, collecting shells and watching pelicans dive for fish. I hadn't heard from Quentin. I sent him a text with my new address and phone number, but he didn't respond. Heather sent a short message. Got your address. Quentin is still upset. Give him time. I tried not to dwell on it, but thoughts of grandchildren often came to me, especially in the evenings when I sat alone on the porch looking at the stars. One day, about a month after moving in, I got a call from Piper. When I heard her voice, I felt tears come to my eyes. "Grandma?" she said hesitantly. "It's me, Piper." "Sweetheart." I could barely contain my excitement. "It's so good to hear from you." "Me too." Her voice was quieter than usual. "Dad doesn't know I'm calling. He forbade us to talk to you." The words hurt, but I tried not to show it in my voice. "I understand, honey. How are you? How's school? How are Ethan and Lily?" "I'm good. I got an A on my science project. Ethan's still the same. Sitting in his room playing video games. And Lily. She misses you, Grandma. She often asks when you'll be back." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I miss you too, sweetheart. I really, really do. But I'm not going back to Falls Church. This is my home now." "I know," Piper said. "Daddy says you left us for some beach." "That's not true, honey," I tried to say calmly. "I didn't leave anyone. I just decided to make a life for myself. Like when you decide to read a book or paint because you like it, not because someone asks you to." "Yeah," she said after a pause. "I understand. You can always come visit me," I continued. "It's so beautiful here. The ocean, the beach, the palm trees. You'd love it." "I'd love to," she said with longing in her voice. "But Daddy says we'll never go to your place." "He's hurt right now, sweetheart. It'll pass with time." "I hope so," she said quietly. "Oh, I've got to go. Mommy's calling for dinner." "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, Piper. And Ethan and Lily too. Tell them, please." After that conversation, I sat on the veranda for a long time, looking out at the ocean and reflecting on my choices. The pain of being separated from my grandchildren was acute, but I knew that to go back would mean falling under Quentin's control again, becoming a free babysitter again and an obstacle to his goals. No, I couldn't do that. Not now that I was finally starting to live my own life. Weeks went by, adding up to months. I had completely furnished my home, turning it into a cozy nest that reflected my taste and interests. There was a comfortable couch and armchairs in the living room, arranged so that they overlooked the ocean. On the walls are my own watercolor landscapes and framed photos. Edmund and me on our wedding day, Quentin the senior, my grandchildren last Christmas. I didn't blot out my past, I just didn't let it dictate my future. In the garden behind the house, I planted a small rose garden. Of course, it couldn't compare to the one I had in Falls Church, but here, under the hot Florida sun, roses bloomed almost year-round. I found varieties that did well in the local climate and spent an hour or two every morning tending them. Gradually, I became more involved in the local community. Together with Eloise, we started volunteering at the library, holding reading hours for children once a week. This partly filled the void of not having grandchildren of my own. The little listeners listened enthusiastically to the stories we read, and their delighted eyes reminded me of Lily. I also joined the local retirement choir. I had never sung in public before, shy of my voice, but here, among similarly amateur singers, it was no longer a problem. We practiced twice a week and performed at local events, charity fairs, festivals, nursing homes. It gave me a sense of community and the joy of being able to give others positive vibes. I still hadn't heard from Quentin, but Piper would sneak a call about once a month. From her stories, I learned what was going on in my grandchildren's lives. Ethan joined the school swim team and started spending less time playing video games. Lily went to kindergarten and drew a portrait of a family that included me, the grandmother who lives near the ocean. Quentin and Heather, according to Piper, did buy a new house after all. Smaller and cheaper than the one they dreamed of, but with a pool and separate rooms for the kids. "Dad still talks about you sometimes," Piper told me during one of our conversations. "Especially when something goes wrong. He says, 'Here's something Grandma would know what to do.'" That made me smile through my tears. So he misses me after all, even though he won't admit it. By the 6-month anniversary of my move, I felt at home in Pine Haven. I had friends, activities that I enjoyed, and a routine that I had set for myself. I no longer woke up thinking that I had to pick up my grandchildren from school or that Quentin was going to hint about selling the house again. I woke up with anticipation of a new day filled with activities I had chosen for myself. On the day that was exactly 6 months since I'd arrived in Florida, Eloise organized a small party at my house. All of our friends came: the Thompsons, Arthur, Susan, and a few other people I had met during that time. We sat on the veranda, enjoying the warm evening, the good food, and the good wine. To Judith, Arthur toasted, raising his glass. To the woman who had the courage to start a new life when many people were ready to give up. Everyone joined in the toast, and I felt tears come to my eyes, this time of happiness and gratitude. Thank you all, I said, looking at the faces of my new friends, for accepting me into your circle, for your support and friendship. I don't regret for a minute that I moved here. After the party, when everyone had left, Eloise and I were alone, sitting on the veranda, looking at the stars over the ocean. You really have no regrets? She asked quietly. Even with the situation with Quentin, I thought for a moment. Do I regret that this crack between us? Of course, do I miss my grandchildren? Every day. But do I regret my decision to move here, to start a new life? No, not one bit. I'm glad to hear that. Eloise squeezed my hand. You deserve to be happy, Judith. You know, I said, looking out at the dark ocean where the stars reflected, I never thought that at 68 I would be starting over, learning to paint, singing in the choir, making new friends. I always thought that at my age, life was already settled and nothing new was to be expected, that all that's left is to watch my grandchildren grow up and slowly prepare for the finals. Many people think so. Eloise nodded. That's why they live by inertia, not allowing themselves to dream of something new. And now I wake up every day thinking, what interesting things will bring me today? And it's a great feeling. The next morning, while I was working on my roses, the phone rang. The number was an unfamiliar one with a Falls Church area code. I answered, expecting to hear Piper's voice. Mom, it was Quentin. His voice sounded uncertain, like he was hesitant to call. Quentin, I tried to hide my surprise. How are you? I'm fine, he said quietly. How are you? I'm good, thanks. I like living in Florida a lot. There was another pause. I could hear him breathing, but he didn't seem to know what to say next. Piper's calling you, he finally said. I know. She thinks I don't know, but I've seen the call tapes. Yeah, she calls sometimes. I didn't deny it. She talks about school, about her brother and sister. She misses you, he said, a touch of accusation in his voice. All kids miss me, especially Lily. She still asks when you're coming back. I felt a stab of pain, but I didn't give in to the manipulation. I miss them very much too, Quentin. I miss you too. But I'm not going back to Falls Church. This is my home now. I understand, he sighed. That's not why I'm calling. Heather thinks I should try to work things out, for the kids. I suppressed a smile. So Heather was the one who insisted on calling. Well, I was grateful for that. I'd like that, I said sincerely. You're always welcome to come visit. There's plenty of room for all of you. The ocean, the beach, the kids would love it. Maybe, he answered uncertainly. Not anytime soon, but maybe over Christmas vacation, if you don't mind. I'd be very happy to, I said, feeling my heart fill with hope. Really, really happy. We talked some more about the kids, about his new house, about my life in Florida. The conversation was awkward, with long pauses and careful wording. But it was a start, a small step toward repairing the relationship. After the conversation, I went to the beach and took a long walk along the water's edge, reflecting on what had happened. Quentin's call hadn't changed my attitude about the move. I still didn't regret my decision. But now there was hope that I could stay connected to my family without sacrificing my independence. In the evening, sitting on the veranda and watching the sunset that colored the ocean in gold and pink, I thought about my life's journey. The girl who married Edmund, the young mother who raised Quentin, the widow who was alone in the big house, the grandmother who cared for her grandchildren, and finally the woman who found the strength to start over at 68. Each of these roles was a part of me, but none of them defined me completely. I was more than just someone's wife, mother, grandmother. I was Judith Woolpool, a woman who had finally learned to put herself first and not feel guilty about it. The ocean was noisy, crashing against the shore. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and a light breeze carried the scent of my roses from the garden. I inhaled deeply, filled with gratitude for this moment, for this life, for the courage that had brought me here. I was home. I was me. And that was all that mattered.